My channel manager once said to me that we need to start off every episode talking football. Well, forget that. This is baseball time. There's a huge series coming up this weekend as BC gets ready for their College World Series run. As they head down to Tuscaloosa, I'm going to tell you why I think the Eagles are going to win in advance to the Super Regionals, excuse me.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome. This is Locked On BC. I'm your host, AJ Black. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the Locked On Network. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started today. So as I said, we are talking baseball. I'm getting ready. I'm getting excited. I don't know about you folks. The College World Series run starts this weekend, Friday. It's an early start for BC as they head off to face Troy in the first round of their regional in Tuscaloosa. Now, I set off on this episode telling you, I think BC's going to win this series. And I'll get into my reasons here in a moment, but I want to say that I think in the end, I said the other day that I thought BC got hosed. And some people called me out on it and said, yo, AJ, they made it to the World Series. They made it to the tournament. How can you say they got hosed? Well, they should have hosted. And I gave you reasons why. That being said, now that we can put that anger as a fan behind you, right? You can now see it for what it could be, which is actually a blessing in disguise for this team. What has BC baseball lived and died on this year? Being the underdog, being the Cinderella story, being the team that no one believes in. What would be the most optimal outcome for them to get, in terms of placement? Having them be the last team out for hosting a regional. That's going to give them the biggest chip on their shoulder. Now, to get me ready for this, as I said, I have not watched every game, but I did some reading up for this because I want to know. I'm not the biggest baseball fan, and I didn't know how the system works. So it's double elimination, okay? And BC had, if they lose their first game, they go into the loser side of the bracket, and they play the loser, I think it's the loser of Alabama Nichols. That hot tracks them into a tougher spot, as Dan Rubin says on BCEagles.com. They get the earlier game. They have a quick turnaround they have to play. But it's double elimination. You want to get those wins. So Troy on Friday is going to be a major win for them, major opportunity for them. They are a part of the Sun Belt. They won 3 out of 4 games against App State in the conference tournament, and then they bowed out against Southern Mississippi. So they have quality wins. They have beaten some good teams. They are part of a very good baseball conference, and so they're one team. Then you get Alabama. Alabama obviously is part of the SEC. And I was reading some statistics the other day that, the SEC, I think, has won like 8 out of 12 last College World Series. They're not a joke. I mean, you can joke about Alabama and their betting scandal, but as a BC person, you probably shouldn't do that because, pot meets kettle, right? But their baseball coach was fired in the middle of the season because of online betting issues. If you remember correctly, there was a time, and I forget who they were playing, but there was a huge controversy that popped up about him potentially making illegal bets, and he was fired. So Alabama has already lost their head coach. Now, to get context on the field, I went to Brett Friedlander, who was an old colleague of mine when I was the writer for BC Bulletin. He did the NC State site. And he picked every regional winner, and he picked Boston College to win. And I thought this was an interesting thing to bring up because he dove into why he thinks the Eagles are going to win. I want to read you what he says. He says, the Eagles barely missed out on hosting a regional, but still ended up with a favorable draw. Alabama is the number 16 seed and has played well despite the distraction of their coach Brad Bohannon getting fired in the midseason for his alleged role in a gambling scandal. A more substantive reason for optimism is the Crimson Tide's pitching staff has been prone to giving up big numbers, and BC's bats, led by hitters Joe Fatrano and Nick Wang, are more than capable of taking advantage. The Eagles have been the ACC's biggest surprise after going just 19-34 a year before. They beat Tennessee on the road and handed Wake Forest one of its rare ACC losses. But before they can start thinking about knocking off the region's top seed, Coach Mike Gambino's team can't get caught looking past opening opponent Troy and its offense that averages nearly 8 runs per game. His prediction, BC upsets the host Crimson Tide and advances to the Super Regionals. So, a couple things in there. One thing I'm really excited about is that they're in a regional that looks good for hitting. Like I feel like BC is going to hit their rut if they hit a team like, remember, Clemson had really good pitching, and that was what killed them in the ACC tournament. If Alabama has struggles pitching, and some of these other teams might struggle pitching as well, BC should be fine. The part that worries me about their matchup is BC's pitching is better than last year when they were dead last. I think they were 10th in the ACC this year, but they still give up a lot of runs. They had a team ERA of like 6. So Troy, a team that's averaging 8 runs a game, BC's going to have to outduel them. They're going to have to hit a lot. They're going to have to get a lot of big at bats. Now, we have not heard injury stats. Talk about bats of Cameron Leary and Travis Honeyman, who are their two of their biggest hitters that have been out with injuries. We have not gotten updates yet on whether they're going to be back, but those would be massive upgrades. Like, those would be massive boosts to this lineup. So cross your fingers, because if you get both of those guys back, Boston College could be heading to the Super Regional. Now, looking ahead, I'm jumping ahead here, folks. Think about something that could happen. What if Wake Forest runs into a tough out? Because if BC wins, they would face the winner of the Wake Forest regional. If Wake Forest loses, somehow they run into, a fluke loss, there's still a chance BC could host a Super Regional, I believe. So there's a lot on the line, but one game at a time. And the first game is going to be Troy on Friday. You're going to want to make sure you check all of that out. But before we get into that, I want that our next segment is going to be talking about Ryan O'Keefe. And I don't think we've talked enough about what this guy could be doing for the Eagles next year. And 247 had a new ranking system out that put him in really strong company. And I'll tell you why in just a moment. Now, I want you to make a fast break to FanDuel during the NBA playoffs, because right now new customers can get a no sweat first bet of up to $2,500. That's $2,500 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. I love FanDuel. Now, if you think, if you're thinking Jimmy Butler and the Heat are going to continue their magical run as an 8 seed and unseed the Denver Nuggets, go over to FanDuel, put some action down, get some of the go to their safe and secure app. And if you win, they're going to pay you instantly. No, runarounds or tough situations to get your money. If you win, you win. That's what I love about FanDuel. So there's no better place to bet all the playoff action than America's #1 sportsbook. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get a no sweat first bet of up to $2,500. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, the official sportsbook betting partner of the NBA. This is Locked On BC. I am your host, AJ Black. And we're moving on and talking about 247 Sports. I'm the editor and publisher of Eagle Insider. And I got a little side note here. If you want to become a subscriber, if you've been thinking about it, we're kicking off official visit season right now. You can get a year's subscription for, I think it's $42 for the entire year. I'm going to have so much freaking content whether it's crystal ball predictions, I'm going to have those up. I'm going to have up this afternoon or tomorrow 5 predictions for the month of June. I'm going to give you some bold predictions. I'm giving you player previews of every guy coming in. I'm going to have recaps. I am going to be up to my eyeballs in VIP news. It's going to be worth $42 just for the month of June. So if you're listening on Friday, it starts on Friday. So if you're listening live right now, you got to wait till Friday to do it. But join up. It's the best. If you want the best BC coverage, myself and Mitch Wolf, we're going to give it to you. And we have a group of national writers that are going to blow your doors off. So check that out. Well, on 247, this year, they started to rank college football transfers. And, they do their top 247. So top 247 recruits. Number 1 is the defensive back from Jackson State that transferred to go with Dion. And you've got guys up near the top, quarterbacks like Sam Hartman, I think is in the top 10. And, the wide receiver from Mizzou, Dominic Lovett, that went to Georgia. You got those guys near the top. That makes sense. So when I get that list, I control F or command F, whatever that button is, and hit Boston. See what comes up. 2 things came up. First of all, Josh DeBerry was the 101th ranked transfer, which out of 3, I think it was 3,000 transfers so far. Tells you what they view him. He's off to Texas A&M, whatever. But what else surprised me was in the top 200 was Ryan O'Keefe of UCF that transferred to BC. This is going to be the wide receiver that is going to take a brunt of what Zay Flowers left behind. Now, I've told you before on this podcast, I have heard he's faster than Zay. Now, that doesn't mean he's as quick as Zay. Mitch has told me, there is different gears and turning it on and things like that. When you're into cuts and things like that, Zay might be better than anyone in college football last year. O'Keefe has elite speed. And he was BC's lone, selection on there. And so I am saying right now, I'm putting this out there that I think Ryan O'Keefe is one of the most underrated transfer commitments this year. When you can get a guy that has had proven track record of 150 receptions over the last 2 years, that he's had, 15 touchdowns or so in the last couple of years. He is a punt returner and kick returner, and many say one of the best in the country. The fact that he's so low, I think folks are selling on this guy way too low. I think Ryan O'Keefe could become and develop into one of the more dangerous wide receivers in the country, because you can do a lot with a quarterback like Emmett Morehead with Ryan O'Keefe. You can give him the ball and try to see what he can do in space. You can just do what Emmett Morehead does best, which is have him run and then just get him the ball deep. You could do those types of things with him and see what he does on special teams. I think Ryan O'Keefe was someone, when I see wide receiver rankings for this transfer class, I see tons of guys that were like, oh yeah, he's a 5-star. How many career receptions he has? 4. Oh, he's a 5-star. What has he done? He hasn't played yet. He was redshirted last year. Ryan O'Keefe is proven. He has shown he can do it. And UCF is not a chump team. I know the coaching staff, Darryl Wyatt, Jeff Hafley, they view him as an elite player. And there's a reason why he didn't play more than two or three snaps in the spring game, because they are holding him to make sure that he is ready to do damage for BC game 1 and not risk any stupid injuries like we had with Mahogany last year. I am telling you, folks, I know folks have accused me of being a maroon and gold honk, and I admit that sometimes I struggle with that. But Ryan O'Keefe is not going to be Zay Flowers. If you're expecting him to be Zay Flowers, you're going to be disappointed, because he can't do that. I don't think BC will ever have a wide receiver, as long as I'm alive, that did what Zay did. But could he become the second best wide receiver that we've seen in recent history? Absolutely. That is without a question something that he's capable of doing. Could he be better than Alex Amadon? Yes. Yes, he can. I cannot wait. And because he can also run the ball too. Like, just get the ball to this guy. He's going to do some stuff. So it was cool to see him ranked. Also depressing that he's the only one that BC had ranked. Now, BC, it's kind of like with recruiting rankings too, right? Sometimes, guys are developmental that BC brings in. Some of the guys that they brought in are developmental. Some guys are players that maybe the recruiting experts at 247 that did this don't know about. Guys like two names that I thought of that I thought were slept on, but it is what it is. Alex Washington and Kyle Hergel were two names I thought, maybe they would make it in there. They didn't. But then I saw how many other, you look at the list of recruits and how many, transfers, and you understand why certain guys didn't make it. Alex Washington was like close to a 4-star when he committed, but there was so many other guys that have 4 stars in terms of like transfer rankings, because 247 does a transfer ranking. I thought, a guy that's been all Ivy, good physical, guy that a lot of Power 5 programs wanted would get there. He didn't. So he got slept on. He's a guy I think is a sleeper. Kyle Hergel was, he's a multi-year starting guard who Bruce Feldman put on his freak list for his athletic ability. I put up a tweet, I think last week at AJ Black 247. The guy is physical as all hell. I thought maybe he would get there, a multi-year starter that has been consistent and has graded out pretty well at Pro Football Focus. Nope, he slept on too. But you know what? This is what Boston College football is all about. It's not about the accolades, because when you get the accolades like Phil Dracovic, getting preseason love and all that, what happens? They fall on their face. When everyone doesn't believe in BC, that's when things go better. So maybe this is a good sign. Maybe if they just keep sleeping on the Eagles, something good will happen when the season starts. So that's just my thoughts. I thought it was an interesting ranking system. Hopefully you come over to Eagle Insider. Just check out the work. There's free stuff. There's pay stuff. I hope you become a member. Join our community over there. And there's some really great BC fans. I hope you become one of them as well. Now, in our final segment of the day, the scheduling has come out for 6 BC games. And I'm going to tell you why I am very excited about a majority of these scheduled times, and you'll find out why in just a moment. This is Locked On BC. I am your host, AJ Black. I want to do a little teaser here. Hopefully, next week we're going to have a big surprise for you. And as a fan, whether you're on a podcast or on YouTube, I think you're going to enjoy this. I don't want to announce it yet until I get everything finalized, but hopefully we'll have that next week. And so hopefully you hit that subscribe button. If you're on YouTube, make sure you have the bell clicked so you know when we go live. All right. It's been a while since there's been football news that isn't recruiting related. As someone who writes a site that has free stuff, which is all like the football news and, just like transactional kind of stuff. And maybe even a little analysis of the game. And then there's the pay stuff, which is a lot of my recruiting news and, things like that. I haven't had a lot of free stuff because it's been like no news. But on Wednesday, BC football got some news from the ACC about some of their start times. And I want to get into that because I think you as a fan are going to want to know what that's going to look like so you can plan your fall and get ready to tailgate and get ready for another season of BC football. Now, they announced the start times of 6 games. Let's break them up. We got 3 September start times. The season opener against NIU at Chestnut Hill on September 2nd is a noon start. It's going to be on ACC Network. So most of you, now that Comcast picks up ACC Network, can have that. If you're around, you can go to the game. Noon start, fine. Week 2, Holy Cross. Noon start. That's going to be streamed on ACC Network Extra and ESPN Plus. For folks that don't know what that means, if you have a smart TV and have the ESPN app, you can get ACC Network Extra. If you have a computer, you can do it on that, your phone, whatever. It's not going to be hard to find. Then the third week home matchup against Florida State also has their kickoff time. And you know what time it starts at? You got it, noon. So all of September so far, up to the Louisville game, week 4, are noon starts. I don't know how you guys feel about it. As a student, I loved the night games. There was something fun about that, especially in the early games. But as someone who has to travel to the games, who either is going to go as a fan or as a media member, I kind of like the noon games. And I know one person out there that does too. Christian Mahogany tweeted out, "Thank God for these games are at noon." So he was very excited about that. But I like it because then you can get along with your day. Like nighttime games just take up your entire day. And I love noon because then you can go to tailgate early, you're done by 2:00, and then you can get on with the rest of your fall day. I think the team likes it. And especially I like it during the early fall, September, when it's warmer. It's always warm, those games. It's gonna be hot, but I think those will be fun. Then we also got 2 game times at the end of the year. One of them, not really a surprise. Or 3 games, excuse me. 2 of them are not a surprise, okay? They're going to have on Friday, November 3rd, the game against Syracuse is a 7:30 start. That's on ESPN2. Not a surprise. Anytime it's a night game, a Friday night, it's going to be a night game. That's fine. Then Thursday, again, it's a nighttime game. Again, not a surprise. It's Thursday night. It's on ESPN. So now that is with that game, Florida State, and the last game I'll tell you about, and Syracuse, that's 4 nationally-ish games that are not on the ACC network. Great, right? And then the final game of the year is against Miami at home, and that's a Friday game, and we're going back to noon. It's a noon start. I think folks have a lot to going on that weekend. I don't know. That's fine. I don't care. But the game is on ABC. That'll be fun, especially since it's Miami, and many folks think that Miami's going to fall on their face again. So that should be a good start. So 4 noon games, as Realist of the Real says, 12:00 is the best start time. Absolutely, Realist. You've got it, man. And I'm excited about that. So we know now 6 of the games, and there's going to be more as the season goes on. The rest of the games are kind of those flex times where the conference will tell you when they're going to start it, and we'll get that later. Now, tomorrow, we're going to preview the first official visit weekend. I'll give you all the names you need to watch for, and I'll tell you some other thoughts I have about that. If you haven't already, follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247. Make sure our YouTube channel, and thank you to everyone who make this your first listen every morning. And if you are an everydayer like Realist of the Real, Marty Party, and Dan Kent, and Working Rich, thank you so much. You guys are the lifeblood of this. I love talking BC sports. I know you guys love listening to it. Well, I hope you do. I mean, you keep showing back up. So thank you all so much. We'll see you all again tomorrow. Have a great day. If you're in Massachusetts, it's going to get like 90 degrees tomorrow. So stay cool, folks. See you again soon.